So, what does a radiation health physicist with extensive background in nuclear emergency response have to say about the new Fallout series? Hi, everyone. My name is DJ, and I am a radiation health physicist, and I have a background in nuclear emergency response, including response to nuclear detonations. And just recently, I watched the first episode of Fallout, and I gotta tell you, I am loving it, despite maybe some inaccuracies. So, full disclosure here, even though I have t shirts and other merch with my face on it in the Fallout style, I have actually not personally played the game myself. So, despite the fact that I am thoroughly enjoying this series, I'd like to talk about the scientific accuracy of the episodes of Fallout so far. So, first off, I'd like to talk about the rule of thumb that you all have seen in the episodes, which is apparently also a part of the game itself. And the rule of thumb here is talking about if you hold your thumb out in front of you and the nuclear mushroom cloud is larger than your thumb, then you should just kiss your butt goodbye because you're not going to survive. When I originally saw that, I was like, no way. Like, where the heck did this come from? And apparently it does come from the game. It's not, there's no scientific accuracy about it at all. So in order to double check that I didn't miss anything in all of my training and experience in nuclear emergency response, I did find at least one study where they actually put this to the test, specifically from the Fallout game here they're talking about, on whether or not the thumb rule is actually true, and they were able to determine that no, it's not. The concern that this rule of thumb is all about has to do with the fallout that comes from a nuclear detonation, specifically a ground nuclear detonation. This fallout can be very, very high levels of radioactive material and high radiation. And the rule of thumb is trying to say if you are in this area here, you're pretty much dead. But this study actually shows that you don't need a plane, a car, or even a horse to be able to get away from this radiation. You could actually physically just run in this direction and get away from that high radiation. But that's not even what you're supposed to do in this sort of situation. This is from the CDC website, and the first thing you need to do is get inside. Then stay inside and stay tuned. Now, this might sound overly simplistic, but it could dramatically increase your chances of survivability. As you saw in the episode, which this was actually a accurate part of the first episode, people, when they are afraid and they're running away, they get in accidents, they trip over each other. If you have potentially hundreds of thousands of people jumping into their vehicles and all trying to drive in the same direction, you're going to dramatically increase the amount of motor accidents and loss of life. Now, the quickest and safest way to protect yourself from radiation from nuclear fallout is to get into the basement of a building, specifically a substantial building. So if you're in something like a trailer home, you're probably going to want to make your way into another home nearby. Something with a basement would be best, but even just in the center of the home can help you out here. The idea is to get away from the fallout that's falling down on top of the home and beside the home. So you want to get as far away from that fallout as you can. And looking at this chart, you can see you can dramatically reduce your radiation dose. Just going into a 2-story home in the basement, you can reduce it by 30 to 50 times. And the bigger the building, the better the reduction in dose is. You can see in this one, if you don't have a basement, you want to get to the center of the building because you're trying to get away from that nuclear fallout as much as you can. So the stuff on the street you want to get away from, so get to the center of that building. Now, the next thing you need to do is stay inside that building. Now, unlike the Fallout series might lead you to believe, you don't need to stay in there for hundreds of years, or you don't even need to stay in there for longer than a few weeks maybe. And that's because radiation from a nuclear detonation decays away very rapidly. Now, here's a rule of thumb you can use. We call this the 7-10 rule of thumb, and this is an example of using it. If you have a amount of radiation, a dose rate of radiation 1 hour after a nuclear detonation, if you go 7 hours, that 7, it reduces it by a factor of 10. So instead of 1,000 R per hour, it's down to 100 R per hour. If you wait for 7 times 7, so about 48 hours later, or 49 hours, it's going to be reduced by another factor of 10. And usually what I remember is after 7 hours, it reduces by a factor of 10. 2 days, it's going to be reduced by another factor of 10, 2 weeks, another factor of 10, and so on. Now, the last thing that you're instructed to do is stay tuned, and that is basically to stand by and wait for the response infrastructure to build up and to assess the situation and tell you when it's safe to go outside, relocate, go to a shelter. It might surprise you, but we actually do have a response infrastructure. We have people that are trained in how to respond to nuclear detonation. Now, I know it is a popular belief to think that if we ever had a nuclear detonation in the United States, that would mark the end of the United States and the beginning of the apocalypse. But honestly, that's kind of giving in to the enemy propaganda. Now, yes, a nuclear detonation would mark a terrible time in our history and would result in a lot of death, but it is something that is survivable. Now, this is not going to go over smoothly if we ever get in this sort of situation. It's going to look very messy, and I'm sure all sorts of mistakes will be made. But the most important thing is for you to understand we will get through this. We will still be a nation if we ever had such a nuclear emergency. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, I am enjoying the Fallout series thoroughly, even with scientific inaccuracies. So in the next video, I think I want to talk about how realistic is it for you to become Ghoul if you ever get exposed to nuclear radiation.